She reached up to the sky of stars and caught the red-hot light of the North Star. Opened the earth, walking with blood-soaked feet. She challenged the whip, the gun, the knife. She challenged the fire, pulled from the bodies of slaves, made into laws, prisons, and courts. Screaming white-hot flames and agony, she challenged millions of headhunters, dragging and ripping apart impossible tender moments of time, shipping vessels of history, ancient history, destroying the fabric, the godlike claw of destiny, of a people, with a gun, a knife, a cannon, building the hideous wall of blood called slavery. She challenged it with burning eyes and black skin, torn skin, whipped skin, degraded skin, smashed skin, dehumanized skin, the humanized skin. Strong enough to bring a free, strong enough to be free.
Well, good afternoon, greetings, and welcome back as always. According to the New Republic, at the Conservative Political Action Conference this past Thursday, Elon Musk appeared on stage in oversized sunglasses, a black Gothic MAGA hat, a thick gold chain around his neck, and wielding a chainsaw. What's really behind the shtick? How do you stop the chainsaw? Let's connect some dots and find out.
Connecting the Dots with Dr. Wilmer Leon, where the analysis of politics, culture, and history converge.
Welcome to the Connecting the Dots podcast with Dr. Wilmer Leon, and I am Wilmer Leon. Here's the point. We have a tendency to view current events as though they take place in a vacuum, failing to understand the broader historic context in which most events occur. During each episode, my guests and I have probing, provocative, and in-depth discussions that connect the dots between these events and the broader historic context in which they take place, thus enabling you to better understand and analyze the events that are impacting the global village in which we live. On today's episode, the issue before us is, according to my guest, to fight the Trump-Musk Doge spending cut chainsaw. It will be necessary to identify, reject, and demolish the fundamental framework of thought shared by every American politician, Trump, Musk, and most leftists, and he means beyond Democrat-aligned liberals whom he does not consider leftists. It's necessary to know and say that there is no problem here that can be solved by spending cuts or tax increases. My guest is an independent journalist whose work can be found at Substack and thepolemicist.net. His latest piece is entitled How to Stop the Chainsaw, which can be found at Substack and The Polemicist. Dr. Jim Kavanagh, as always, welcome back.
Thank you for having me, Wilmer. Always a pleasure.
So before we get to your piece, yesterday, in a dramatic shift in transatlantic relations under President Trump, the U.S. split with its European allies by refusing to blame Russia for its invasion of Ukraine in votes on 3 UN resolutions in Trump's so-called attempts to end this conflict. Jim, there are 2 adages that we know. A broken clock is right twice a day. And second, even a blind squirrel can find a nut in the forest sometimes. Trump is that squirrel, and he's right on this one, Dr. Jim Kavanagh.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's so crazy following him around as he's foraging through the forest because he's digging up a lot of crazy stuff. But here, this is, and he changes from day to day. I mean, it's like the weather in San Francisco. You don't like it, wait a day or wait a few hours. But here, I think we can be pretty confident that Trump really does want to really reset relations with Russia. And he respects Russia. He's willing to deal with Russia and with Putin as respected interlocutors on the global stage. This is a powerful country. They have real resources. We can't just pretend they're not there. We can't stop talking to them. I mean, this has been crazy. The United States and Soviet Union talked all the time during the Vietnam War when they were, but for the last 6 years, you couldn't talk to Russia. You couldn't even acknowledge that they're a real legitimate country. So Trump is getting over that. I think that's pretty clear. We haven't heard the specifics of what any kind of deal about the Ukraine war is going to be. And I'm still very skeptical about whether that's going to be worked out in a way that's satisfactory to both sides. But we do, I think, see very clearly that Trump wants to break with this attitude that, you put Russia in the corner, you put them on a timeout, we don't talk to them anymore. Russia is a country. They're a powerful country. They're not a devilish country. They're not entirely responsible, at least for the war in Ukraine. And we got to have respectful dealing with them. And that's a very good thing. It's a very positive thing. I can't deny it.
What do you take away from, and this may be rhetorical, and this may be a huge, not a softball, but a beach ball. But what do you take away from the Western media reaction to this? Because when you watch MSNBC, when you watch CNN, they all keep chanting the same narrative. Russia started this. If you acquiesce now, Putin is going to march through Europe, and pretty soon you'll find him in Tennessee. I mean, they're sticking with. I give them credit. They're sticking with the bit, but Trump comes out and says, "Look, Volodymyr, you got to give up the territory, partner. You lost this one. You shouldn't have started it in the first place. He's right. Well, you shouldn't have swatted that hornet's nest because now you got your hind part stung.
Yeah, that's true. But, it was the United States that was doing that was behind him.
Absolutely.
I mean, you can't pretend. And Donald Trump gave he started the sanctions on Russia with the Skripal stuff. And he sent
weapons into the Ukraine.
Sent the offensive weapons to Ukraine that Obama didn't. Obama had the smarts to say, this is not a crucial issue for us. Ukraine is crucial to the Russians, not to us. So this has been a proxy war. Boris Johnson said it a couple of days ago. This is a proxy war. So, and I don't, frankly, I did a video about this item maybe a year ago now. I don't blame Zelensky for being pissed off. He was going to sign an agreement in February 2022 that Trump is talking about. You had a lot of chances. Yes, they did. But the Americans and the British told him not to sign the agreement. So Zelensky saying, you told me that if I didn't sign the agreement, I kept fighting. You're going to give me everything I need. Now you're walking away. It's the Kissinger line: to be America's friend is dangerous, to be their enemy, to be America's enemy is dangerous, to be America's friend is fatal. And that's what we're seeing. And Trump is just taking, I don't really care what I did 6 years ago. I don't care what Biden's been doing for the past 4 years with the American government. I'm going whatever way it is that I think we have to be going. And one of the things I think is, Zelensky is a fool and this whole war is foolish. Now, what the specific contours of what he's willing to give up to the Russians, I'm not sure about that. But it's an attitude that is entirely different. The Europeans are furious about it. The Democrats are furious about it. MSNBC is furious about it. I'm sure legacy Republicans are furious about it because it's going to mean a victory of Russia and a clear defeat for what was the proxy war that the United States, NATO were waging against Russia. And Russia has won it and will win it. And if Trump is willing to let that go, he can do it. He's smart. He'll say it was all Biden's fault.
Which is what he's doing.
Yeah, it was all Biden's fault. I have nothing to do. I'm just going to walk away from it. And if you want to blame it on somebody, blame it on. He could play that game. He's very smart. And I think he's politically astute enough to do that. But I also know there's going to be a tremendous amount of pressure on him to try and get something from Russia that makes it look like Russia didn't win.
And what that could be, when you're standing on the podium in the number one spot, holding up the trophy, how then they say you didn't win, and you look at the scoreboard and you have more points on it than the opposition. Yeah. I don't know how you spin that one. Final point on this. One would think that after the blowing up of the Nord Stream pipeline and the deindustrialization of Germany and how much Europeans are paying to heat their homes, that they would be saying to Donald Trump, thank you. Finally, we can move on. But no, at least the leadership, the elite are saying, bring back Joe Biden.
Look, there's a great guy on Twitter, Arnaud Bertrand. He's a Frenchman who lives in China. He has a great Twitter feed. And one of the things he said was, if the Europeans were smart, they'd be out trumping Trump. They'd be going to China and to Russia and saying, okay, well, let's make a deal. We want your energy back. We want to do this. Ukraine is America's problem. Well, we don't really, if they really think Putin has the idea of marching into London. I mean, this is absurd, as you say. It has nothing to do with the history of Russia and Ukraine and what's happened in Ukraine over the past 10 years. And they've got to know that. I mean, it's one of these things. They can't believe what they're saying about this. And if they just give up the crap the baloney that they're saying, they could say, okay, we should have, Russia's an important country. It's more important to us than it's the United States. And United States, we got to let's talk to Russia, let's talk to China, and let's leave the United States behind. They're in this pickle because they followed the United States like little obedient lapdogs for the past 30 years, 20 years, and they'd have a foreign policy of their own. And now the master is saying, kicking the lapdog out into the street and saying, go find your own way. So they should go to the other guy over there who's willing to have good relations with them if they want. It's crazy. It's crazy.
It is utterly, utterly insane. Okay. The next issue I want to get to before we get to your piece, which I think is a good transition into it. This is from, I think it's from The Hill. it's crunch time for Mike Johnson and the Republican so-called big, beautiful bill. Republicans push to enact Trump's tax, immigration, national defense, and energy agenda. It's at risk of faltering, according to folks in the House, as the Speaker, Mike Johnson, attempts to coax his slim majority into an agreement that still may be far away. Johnson is now waffling on whether to put the budget resolution up for a floor vote today in face of a potential revolt from swing state district Republicans wary of cuts to Social Security safety net benefits, fiscal hawks who say the $2 trillion in spending cuts don't reach far enough. So go ahead.
Yeah, look, this is, and again, this didn't start with Trump. And this is the same old fight we've been having for decades. We're going to find the money. What's the budget? So the Republicans are in a pickle now because the Republicans have captured working class voters. They've captured a working class base, and they have to give something to that base. They can't just take everything from the working class, which is what the Musk Doge agenda is going to do. All this spending cut nonsense is going to be at the expense of ordinary working people. And he's got to go after the Social Security and Medicare, as Joe Biden said, for 40 years. Those are the big pools of expenditures, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So people are getting PO'd about that. They're getting PO'd about everybody's getting fired for nobody knows what reason. I mean, just for the sake of cutting. This is the point. The premise here is spending is bad. Deficits are bad. We got always good to cut spending. This is nonsense. But so Johnson's in that position, and the Republicans are in that position. What is their program for the United States? What is their agenda for the American people? They now have to answer that question, and the people are not going to like it. They're not going to like having the Social Security and Medicare cut. They're not going to like it.
That's the same problem for the Democrats.
Exactly.
And Hakeem Jeffries doesn't have an answer to the question.
Doesn't have an answer because for all the Democrats have to say, "Oh, we do have to cut spending. If you accept the framework, you're trapped in it." This is Obama, Pelosi. We're going to be sending our children. We're sending our credit card to our children. They can't pay it. The bank. We have to cut spending. Social Security would have been cut. The president who came closest to cutting Social Security was Obama. When he put forward the grand bargain,
everything's on the table.
He put forward a program which would have started to cut Social Security by changing the calculation. The Republicans wouldn't accept it because they were too stupid. They wouldn't accept a tax hike that went along with it, so they didn't accept it. But that was the closest they came. And he and Biden got up every year and said, "We have to cut Social Security and Medicare." The Republicans are right. If we don't do that, so this is all. And the Republicans now, they have the power, they have the control. They can't, the Democrats can't stop them. And so, what are they going to do with it? And, I don't know what they're going to do with it because they're already having revolts in town halls about this stuff. And everybody's, focusing on Musk because what is he doing firing people? Who is he? We didn't vote for him. And he has a conflict of interest. He gets government contracts. So there is going to be a huge budget fight. There's going to be a fight over the debt ceiling. And I think Trump has said he wants to eliminate the debt ceiling, which he should do. But that goes into my article again. But I'm just saying, this is the problem now for the Republicans who now have to do something for their working class base. And this is where I don't know where the working class base can go because go back to Democrats, it's the same damn problem. This is the same fundamental framework of thought about whether the government needs to tax money to spend, whether they need to have deficits or don't have to have deficits, or whether national debt is something that's bankrupting us. All this baloney is baked into the American political discourse now across the spectrum, and it's killing us. I can't hear you.
This is a perfect opportunity for the Democrats. And who was it? Alexandre Ledoux-Rollin who said, "There go the people. I must follow them, for I am their leader." I mean, when you look at all of the folks that are protesting, all of these town halls that are being held in swing state, predominantly Republican districts, These folks are pissed. They are pissed to the highest of festivity. And all you have are Democrats led by Hakeem Jeffries going, well, they have the House, they have the Senate, and they have the executive branch. What do you want me to do?
Yeah.
Well, there go the people. Follow them.
And lead them. But you gotta have the line. You gotta have the program. You gotta have the explanation. And really, this is every Democrats or Republicans. Has to be settled in the street, because the Democrats' answer to the Republicans here is no. We got to tax the rich. Yes, we do have a bankrupting our country. The national debt is bankrupting. You want to cut everything? No. We have to tax the rich. Okay, I have nothing against taxing the rich, but not for that reason. This is just false. It's a false paradigm. It's like,
and we're going to get there in 1 minute. We're going to get there in 1 second. There's one other point I want to make, and that is, and this is also from the Hill. This is crazy. So according to the Hill, the Trump administration is looking for $2 trillion in spending cuts to finance Trump's massive tax reductions. But he's made some promises that complicate the mission. And that is, he's vowed there will be no federal cuts to any of the big three: Social Security, Medicare, or Medicaid. So Mike Johnson comes out, or the House Republicans, they're looking to take $880 billion out of Medicaid, but here's how they define it. They're not cutting benefits, they're cutting expenditures. So the states can feel free to make up the difference if they want to, but they're cutting benefits, not expenditures. If that isn't spin, hyperbole, and since Macron was in Washington yesterday, garbage, Jim, that takes us into your piece about the chainsaw, Dr. Jim Kavanagh.
Well, yeah, what's the difference between cutting benefits and cutting expenditures? I mean, and tax cuts aren't funded by spending cuts. Spending cuts aren't. This is the fundamental, this is, I hate to say the words because people reject it, but this is what's called modern monetary theory, but it's not modern. I really go to my article and read the quote from 1946, a chair of the Federal Reserve Board saying, taxes are not for revenue. Taxes are for controlling inequality and for social purposes. The fundamental fact is, and everybody kind of accepts this, but they don't think through it, we have a fiat monetary system, which means the federal government creates money at will, okay, through congressional appropriations process. But that means the federal government is the money creator. It doesn't need taxes. It doesn't need anybody's taxes. It doesn't need to borrow anything. It doesn't need any revenue. If you could create money for your family and you created it and issued it to your children to get an education, buy a house, have a nice life, blah, 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 would you care if you got it all back from them in taxes? You take it all back every year? That's crazy.
Take a step back, because you said a fiat monetary system is a system that where the currency isn't based on anything.
Not based on any revenue.
There was a time,
yes, when
we had a gold standard. Yes. And that meant that every dollar issued was backed by an amount of gold,
yes,
in Fort Knox. Then we even had a time when it was based on silver. There were silver certificates.
I have one. I still have a $2 silver
$2 bills. I've got a few upstairs that say at the bottom,
yep,
redeemable in silver.
Yep.
We went off of that standard And that took us where, Dr. Jim Kavanagh?
Yeah, we went off of that standard finally in 1971. And since then, we're in a total fiat system, which means what we call money is a digit in an account. That's what it is. It's not a quantity of gold somewhere. Before it was a quantity of gold. Before the paper currency or the digits in the account represented a quantity of gold somewhere or a quantity of silver. Now it represents nothing but itself. It really does. People think that's a huge problem. If you think it's a problem, then argue about it. But that's what we have. And it's not the problem that people think it is. It gives us a tremendous amount of power because we don't need anybody else's money. The money that you pay, that the rich have, that the poor have, that they didn't get from a bank, all the taxable money is money that was created by the federal government. And the federal, it's essentially the federal government spends money into existence. And then it takes some of it back. All the federal dollars in the system are essentially interest-free loans from the government. And the government takes some of it back, but it doesn't take all of it back. And you'd be crazy for the government to take back everything every year. That's why we have deficits. The government's deficit is the economy's surplus, and all the money in deficit is money in somebody's account in the real economy. Now, if there's too much money in too few people's accounts, guess what? The government has a way of taking it back with taxes on the people who have too much money, not because they needed to pay for anything, but because they have too much money. And what we learn and can see with Elon Musk is when they have too much money, they have too much power. And that destroys democracy. This is what we're learning. We don't need Elon Musk's money because we need it to pay for anything. We need it because he can't have it. Five people having half the money in the country is bad for the economy and bad for democracy. And that's why you have high interest rates. And I go back again to 1946, the chair of the Federal Reserve, he recognized this, he said it. That's why we have taxes. We don't have taxes, so you can't have this argument. The so-called left's answer to cut everything. No, raise the taxes on the rich, because that'll pay for it. No, it won't. That doesn't pay for anything. It really doesn't. And you've got to get over everybody. That's why I say the words taxpayer dollar and taxpayer money are poison. And everybody has to stop saying that. There's no such thing as taxpayer money. That's Margaret Thatcher. There's no such thing as public money. There's only taxpayer money. That's the opposite of the truth. The only public money gets put into it's public money. It's not an individual. It's a decision. Fiat currency is the product of this political and social decision by the Congress that sends money into the economy for certain purposes. What we have to focus on is what are those purposes? What do we want to create money for? And are we creating money for something for question of the real resources there to buy the things that we need? That's a problem if there's that, but it's not about where do we get the money. You don't get it from the rich. We got to stop acting like beggars. We don't go to the rich. Please, you are the donors of society. You are the ones on whom we depend for our money. That gives them more rights, doesn't it? So no, we don't care what you think. We don't care what you say. We're 300 million people. We're going to make a decision and create the money that we have the power to create. This is power that we have. That's what the fiat monetary system does. It gives us as a community power to make money. And again, every dollar in taxes that you give back is a dollar that was already created and given to you, found its way to you somehow from the federal government. The other dollars in the economy, and there are a lot of them, guess what? Come from private banks. And those are loans you do have to pay back, the whole thing with interest. That's why there's a tendentially inverse relation between public spending, government and government debt and private debt. And the banks and the banksters want you in private debt. And that's what's going to happen. You're going to save. How many workers are you going to throw out of jobs in Virginia? All the government jobs in Virginia. They're not going to pay any more taxes because the only money you pay taxes with is money that the government spent into the economy. So and they're going to have they're going to lose their homes. They're all complaining about it, and it's true. Government spending, that's the other purpose of government spending that Elon Musk kind of sees but doesn't understand the positive value of government spending is a jobs program. Guess what? There are more people employed by the government than there have to be. You know why? Because the private capitalist economy can't employ them all. It cannot provide jobs and decent standards of living for people. So the government has taken up a kind of a shadow, partial, employer of last resorts. And if the government sends 1 million people back out on the street, where are they going to go? Who's going to take them? Who needs them? That's the problem. So we have a late capitalist economy, which doesn't provide jobs for people. We have a government which provides a lot, more than they have to, but that's because, we're leaving the productive, whatever's left of the productive realm to the capitalists. So the point is, spending is not a bad thing. Deficits are not a bad thing. They're necessary. You don't put money into the economy and take it all back. That's crazy. Deficits are good and necessary. And the debt thing here is something got to get. These words don't mean the same thing.
Right.
They don't. When you or I borrow money, we go to a bank, we borrow money for something that we need to buy. We need to buy or build a house or buy a car. We get that money. We have interest. We got to pay it back fully with interest. It's money that was created by the bank because they have the right from the government to create. But we're doing it to get something, to do something that we need. The government doesn't need money. If I could create money, I wouldn't go to the bank to borrow it, right? So the government doesn't. When they borrow money, what happens is they say there's a deficit. Here's the amount of money we collect in taxes this year. Here's the amount of money we spent. There's less we collect in taxes. So we have to. This is a relic of the gold standard. Mm-hmm. We have to go and borrow the difference. And what does that mean? The government. What that means is the government has people, wealthy people, and countries that have accounts at the Fed that are full of money already, and they go to those people and they say, "I want to sell you a treasury bill." And they buy so if the government has a deficit of $1 billion, they go out and sell selling $1 billion worth of treasury. That means wealthy individuals in China transfer money from an account, money that already exists, from a checking account to a CD account, which is time deferred, so they can't spend it for a while. So there's $1 billion in the Fed that's transferred from one account to the other. It's not used by the federal government to pay for anything, to do anything with. It sits in the account. Federal government doesn't need it, and they don't want it. And that's not what the bonds are for. What the bonds are for is, if there's this difference between taxes and spending, maybe that'll cause inflation. So we'll sell bonds in order to get wealthy people or people who are already holding a lot of money not to spend it for a while. And we'll pay them interest not to spend it for a while. It's nuts. That's just a gift to the rich. And it's going to create more inflation later on because that interest payment is not coming from taxes. It's going to be new money spent in the economy to give to those rich people as a reward for not spending some of their money for a time. So that's what a government debt is. It's not like your debt or my debt or anybody else's debt. If I were going into debt by going to some rich person and saying, I want to hold your money for a while and I'll pay you later for the privilege of letting me hold it. That's not what you do when you go to debt. That's what the government is doing. And it doesn't have to be done. And again, economists and everybody say it. You go to them and you say, if the government creates money, why does it have to borrow it? That's the problem with the household analogy. And the household, and it's got to be run like a household. It's got to be run like a business. Well, think about it for a second. Households and businesses don't create money. If your household created money, under what conditions would you go to a neighbor and say, oh my gosh, can I have some of your money and hold it for a while and I'll pay you for the privilege of letting me do that? When I could create all the money I wanted, you wouldn't do that. And that's what we're doing. But they've got everybody thinking that national debt, government debt is a problem like it is for you or for me or for a business. And it's just obviously not true. If you accept the fiat money system, and that's what it is. I mean, you can accept it, but that's the fact. And everybody will acknowledge it. That's a fiat money system. The government creates money by Congress saying following sums are authorized to spend. And they put the money into people's accounts, and that money then circulates around the economy and gets into, and what you have to do is say, we're not going to let that money get hoarded by 5 people. That's a social tool, that money. That's a tool that we have and we can use. And the purpose of it is to facilitate production and distribution of real values. It's not to get so that people can hoard a lot of it. And So that social purpose, that's the purpose of taxation. We want to make sure that money ends up where we want it to end up. So this is really, it's a very important point, and everybody reacts about it. It's crazy. It's not crazy. It's just obviously true. If you accept that we have a fiat currency, and you kind of got to accept it because it's just blatant fact, then the mathematics are there. Then what the government spends is what you get. and if they give it all back, you got nothing, except if you go to the bank and borrow money.
One of the things that I remember Donald Trump saying in 2015 or 2016 during the campaign, a reporter might have asked him how he was able to make so much money. And he said debt. He said, I leverage debt. I love debt. And that brought up the saying, when you owe the bank $1 million, the bank owns you. When you owe the bank $100 million, you own the bank. Mm-hmm. And that to me is consistent with some of what you're just explaining in terms of the power of debt and the power of deficits. Somebody made the point about the United States is just a corporation. Well, there's also another, you pointed out why that's not true, but there's also, because it doesn't create money, there's also another reason. The mission, the purposes are different. The purpose of a corporation is to make profit. That is not the purpose of a government. That's not supposed to be the purpose of a government. And the purpose of the government is to provide services. And so one of the big fallacies here, because a lot of people are attributing all of this Doge stuff and to Donald Trump, folks seem to have forgotten Bill Clinton and reinventing government as we know it. And he put Al Gore on the mission, go out here and let's figure out how to run the country like a corporation. And you can't do that. Dr. Jim Kavanagh.
Yeah. It's not run for profit. It's not run like a business. It's not run like a household. Doesn't have to balance its books. Doesn't care whether it's in deficit because it has the power to create money. Talking about the monetary system now, okay? And you're right. Again, what the government's task is not to balance its books or to make a profit or to make sure it doesn't have a loss. It doesn't care about that. What the government's purpose is, well, that's for us to decide. What is the purpose of it? What do we want
the government to do? That's
what
our job.
Purposes do we want it to have? Do we want it to have the biggest military in the world with 15 aircraft carriers? Do we want to help provide health care to everybody? We want it to provide a decent job for everybody, a decent home for everybody. We can do that. The money for it is available to be created. It's not there anywhere.
Wait a minute now, because now
there's no pot of money anywhere.
Wait a minute, because now you're sounding like one of those crazy democratic socialists.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Now,
but everybody has to realize this system is in place and it's not being used by socialists. It's being used by capitalists. What that money is there for their purpose,
right,
is to make sure we have the biggest military in the world so we can defend all the capitalist classes in the world. And we can defend our capitalism as a system. That was certainly through the Cold War. And somehow they're still going along with that. And Trump is smart enough to see that, that's not really a problem anymore. But at any rate, it's also there to make sure that we keep the people as docile workers for us. And we keep the people thinking that they have to let us have the power and thinking that they don't have the power that they already have. This is the point of this particular aspect. This is not socialism. I think it's a kind of necessary thing for socialists to understand. But why the government and the academic and the academic economics don't want you to understand this is because the minute you understand it, there's a whole set of things you think are impossible to do that become possible to do. then you can decide whether you want to do them or not whether there's money there for it. That's an irrelevant question. The money is not there. It's to be created, and it's possible to create it. And if there's too much money in the economy, we have a way of taking it. But this is the thing about Trump. Everybody has to be careful about this, because he's going to say, if he says, I want to abolish the debt ceiling, he's right. The debt ceiling is a fiction. It's nonsense. James K. Galbraith, I have it in my article. This whole business about the public debt is a fiction, and the debt ceiling is just nonsense, and it should be abolished, okay? He wants to, half of him understands this. It's crazy. He wants to abolish taxes on Social Security payments. Of course you should abolish the taxes on Social Security.
You've already paid the tax on it. You paid the tax on it when you earned it.
No, that's not, sorry, I gotta stop. It's not for that reason.
Oh, okay. But that is true.
It is true. Well,
okay.
It is. What I'm saying is, because the payment, if the government's giving you a payment and take some of it back, then they're just giving you a reduction in the payment. I mean, Don't give you the payment if you're going to give you the payment, right? So that's the Social Security. But the point, and then he said when he and Obama both for temporarily suspended the contributions, the FICA taxes on workers during the pandemic, and Obama did it for a while, and most of the leftists and progressives said, no, you can't do that. It's going to undermine Social Security, because it's by paying money into those taxes into those trust funds that we fund Social Security. And Bernie Sanders comes along and says, I have a plan for funding Social Security by raising taxes on the rich. Those taxes do not fund Social Security. That's a fiction. It's a game. The government funds Social Security like it funds everything else with new money it creates. It doesn't need those trust fund taxes. So if Donald Trump suggests eliminating the trust fund, leftists should say, right, we have to understand this. We don't need those trust funds. They don't pay for anything. And the fact is, we got to think about taxation in terms of what its real purpose is, which is not to fund anything.
But wait a minute.
We got to realize most people pay too much taxes. People who pay less than the median wage, their income doesn't exacerbate inequality. We have to have very high taxes on the rich and fewer taxes on working people.
But if you say Trump is right, well, in fact, we can go back way back, but let's just go back to George W. Bush. He wanted to privatize Social Security.
Yeah, that's
right. Okay, which meant he wanted to allow his buddies at pick a financial firm to manage the money, thereby stealing the money. Donald Trump now talks about a similar process. But aren't you trusting when you say what you just said? Aren't you trusting that those in charge are going to do right by the people collecting Social Security, instead of taking money out of the account, putting it in their own pockets, and then claiming, well, we're cutting your benefits because we don't have the money?
Well, that's why you've got to fight the problematic. They don't have to cut the benefits if they don't collect taxes. They don't. The taxes.
No, I realize that. But I'm asking the question, aren't you trusting that by making that statement you just made, aren't you putting full faith and credit in those people instead of, so you've got to put, my point is, you've got to put some other parameters around them, or else they'll rob you blind.
I'm sorry, but the only thing that guarantees this is a political movement, is people being aware of how this works and insisting on
you and I are agreeing.
This is the problem. It's not some kind of accounting that's what Roosevelt did, and he said it. Roosevelt said these trust funds are not economically needed. It's straight politics. They're there to make it look like people deserve these things because they've paid into it. Okay, he said that. And the point is, if people do think, if ordinary workers think, oh yeah, I got to chip in or else I don't deserve this, that has nothing to do with it. If we as a society can afford to provide a pension for everybody that's a decent pension, not because we don't have the money, but because the resources that are available are there. They're there. The healthcare is there. the housing is there, or if not, we can build it, we can rate it. But so you've got to this is my point. I don't trust anybody. And this is the problem. There's got to be a political movement. And I would hope it would come from the left that will say, we don't want anything to do with your taxes for this reason. We don't need them. We don't need them. We want control, real democratic control of the money-making process, the congressional appropriation process. And we want that to be controlled by us in a way that does what we want. Money is created for the purposes we want it to be created for. That's what we have to be in control of the money-making process. But if you sit back and say, well, we're going to get the money, but how are we going to get the taxes? Then you're giving yourself no control. You're saying, something is out of my control. It's not. This is the point. It's a question of power. We have to realize the power we have. And we have the power, the other side of the coin of the fiat money system. And that's the deal, is the government has the power to create money, and it has the power to take back some of the money it created. That's what taxes are for. But you don't take it back to pay for anything, because it's crazy. You take it back for social purposes. Number one being control inequality, and number two being inflation. If there happens to be a mismatch between the amount of money and the amount of resources in the economy, not between the two columns on a spreadsheet, then you might have to take some back. But you only take back money from in taxes from people who have too much money. It's not a question of, everybody has to chip in. People chip in. They have their rights and prerogatives within the fiscal system we have as citizens, not as taxpayers. You're a citizen. You're a good citizen. You work it. That's your right. Then you have the right to determine what money we create to spend on whatever we want to spend it on. But the democratic process, this is the problem. We're stuck with these two goddamn parties, excuse my French, that represent billionaires, all of them. They say, we're good billionaires, bad billionaires. And, they make you think that the money-making process is some kind of mysterious thing. And it depends on collecting money from billionaires, which means we need billionaires, and blah, 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 blah. It's none of that. Get rid of it. Get it out of your head. No revenue is needed for the federal government to spend. And the taxes that are paid are not used to pay for anything.
Mel W., thank you for that $5 super sticker. Shelly H., thank you for the $3 super sticker. And let me say, I'm not going to tax you all for contributing. This is a tax-free zone. So please, folks, contribute to the program, and I'm not going to tax you for doing so.
Let me say something which is important, and because this is one of the things that makes it confusing to people, because states and localities do have to collect tax. They don't create money. So they have to operate, balance the books and operate and tax people. They get the money from the people, the money that comes from the federal. That's why they want to get rid of federal payments to those things and put more burdens on the states and localities. And that's why it's very confusing people, because a lot of the taxes that people pay are local taxes, property taxes, school taxes. And that is, those localities really do have the need to go out and take money from you, or else they can't spend anything. That's a different thing. But everybody has to understand how specific the federal government is, and federal government doesn't need that revenue.
And that's one of the reasons why, and thank you, Ronald Reagan, for taking away the federal contributions to the states. Folks, that's why you now have to pay for your child to participate in band at school. That's why you have to pay to have your child participate in athletics after school. That's why you have to pay tolls with the Easy Pass, because of the public-private partnership, because the state doesn't have enough money to build the road themselves, because the revenue sharing programs that we used to get before Ronald Reagan have been dramatically cut back, and now the states have to get deeper in your pocket in order to be sure that your trash gets picked up, your snow gets removed, because, to Dr. Kavanagh's point, the state doesn't create money.
Exactly.
But so now, with all that you've just laid out, Elon Musk walking around with his sunglasses on and his chainsaw, talking about waste, fraud, and abuse. Well, I can understand waste, but the fraud issue is something that has to be determined by courts. You can't look at an expenditure and claim that it's a fraudulent expenditure until that has been. That's a legal term. This whole thing about we're cutting waste, fraud, and abuse, we're cutting waste. You don't know that, Elon Musk, because you haven't done the forensic accounting and the forensic audits to make that determination. You're out there with a chainsaw like a monkey with a razor blade, Jim Kavanagh.
And all he's looking at is numbers. I mean, that's what he's looking at, balancing numbers, balancing the books, how much money we spend. Again, this is irrelevant to the federal. It's irrelevant. Now, it's, of course we should do away with waste, fraud, and abuse, but this is always the excuse that the Republicans have been saying this for 50 years. Oh, I'm Barry Goldwater, Ronald Reagan. I don't want to cut Social Security. I just want to cut waste. I want to cut waste. And they get in and they go after Social Security, Medicare. Same thing with Obama. Okay. So the waste, fraud, and abuse stuff is never enough to make the difference that they say needs to be made. Oh, look at the federal debt. Oh, look at how many trillions of dollars. You're not going to find that much waste, fraud, and abuse. You're not. Right. So forget about it. That's not what you're after. And he does. And he says the quote, the tweet that I quoted in my article, I'm after this to cut spending. We have to cut spending because otherwise we're going to go bankrupt.
Well, wait a minute.
We have to cut waste, fraud, and abuse because otherwise we're going to go bankrupt. We have to cut spending.
I'll tell you where the fraud is. I know where the fraud is. The fraud is we had to go into Afghanistan. Yeah. That was fraud. The fraud is we had to go into Iraq. That was the fraud. And the fraud now is, Iran has a nuclear program and we're going to have to attack Iran. Yeah. That was the fraud. But unfortunately, that's fraud that they don't want to have anything to do with.
No, they're sending new nuclear or bunker buster weapons to Israel to blow
that's the fraud.
Palestine, whatever you call it. That's not something that is a purpose. I think that if we as a democratic society were really controlling the money, we would want to spend money on. But
that's already been determined because 70% of Americans told Kamala Harris,
exactly,
we don't want to go into Gaza.
Exactly.
And she ignored. And that wasn't 70% of Democrats. Yep. That was 70% of the American people.
Yep.
And she ignored them, which is why her behind is now they're talking about her running to be governor of California. I mean, but that's another conversation.
Yeah, I don't know what. I look. I am terribly confused about what's happening because we're in this situation. Your business about stop clock twice a day. And the clock is kind of like a surrealistic clock. It's melting around. I mean, it's very strange because Trump is going and doing some things that I support, like and that are radical in quote unquote terms. They're anti-establishment, and then he's going doing crazy things like the Gaza plan, which is nuts, and he doesn't even understand how nuts it is. But of course, it's also actually the plan that's in place, the plan that the Israelis are doing and the Americans have been doing for a year. So they're, and clearly he's surrounded by a bunch of really reactionary right-wing people that on the whole are going to destroy us. But you got these little things now and then that I can't argue with that. That's the right thing. And the Democrats would never have done it. I mean, this business with Russia never would have done it. But we are facing this thing. And, Elon Musk, again, you don't go into a business. You don't go into a huge business and say, I'm going to throw some guys who know nothing about this business and go in and tell everybody how to run the business. Just cut numbers for the sake of cutting numbers. You got to understand how things work on the ground. And first of all, you have to understand, and this is the fundamental thing. The purpose of this agency of the federal government is not to balance its books. It's not. No. That's not a purpose. The purpose of this is what are we doing? Is it achieving its purpose? That you can look at. But Elon Musk doesn't care about that. His little Doge boys don't care. But they're just looking at, look, I get these numbers to match up. Or look at this column over here. And this has this many people in it. And that must mean that's wasteful. No, you don't know what that means. You don't know how There are people who work in this agency for 20, 30 years. They know how the work's being done. So there are agencies I don't like. There are agencies I do like. They're all going after this. This is not a political program. It's an economic program. It's an economic program of we have to cut spending to avoid bankruptcy. This is nonsense. It has to be rejected out of hand. Not, oh no, we can avoid bankruptcy by raising taxes. That is, you give that back, you're finished. You're going to lose because they're going to show you that you'll never collect enough taxes to do everything you want. And they are right. You'll never collect enough taxes for this $12 trillion debt, because that has nothing to do with taxes. but any program you do, Bernie Sanders, if we raise the taxes on the rich enough, we can have Social Security for another 20 years. Well, then what after that? This is not the way you fund these programs. And if your response is to argue about tax hikes versus spending cuts, you're in the paradigm and you're going to lose. You have to refuse the paradigm. This is not about balancing the books. This is not about where we find the money. The money is created, not found. The government doesn't collect revenue, it creates money. And you got to start with that and insist on it. And I'm telling you, anytime you hear the word taxpayer dollars or taxpayer money, you got to say, no, that's wrong. Right now, if we don't start doing that, we're going to get trapped. Because if it's the case that taxes pay for federal government programs and it's taxpayer money and it's tax dollars, then who pays the most taxes? Don't they have more rights over this than you? So think about that. We don't depend on them. That is an attitude of dependence and beggar. Oh, we're gonna get the taxes. We're gonna go find the rich. No, get them out of your mind. You don't need them. Because we have the power. We have the power. The rich don't have the power to create money. They don't. We do. And we have the power to take it from them if we want. And rightfully so, because it's not their money. It's our money. We created it. And we did it for a social purpose to help society produce and distribute real goods and services. And if they're hoarding it, that's not what it's for.
You wrote a piece and you just talked a little bit about Gaza. You wrote a piece, the second phase, it's a video. The second phase of Gaza ceasefire. And I want to say this, the focus, the inhumanity and the atrocities that the Zionist forces have inflicted on Gaza are now being turned on those Palestinians in the West Bank. One of the fundamental issues I've had with this whole negotiation process is the reality that Zionism is a white supremacist settler colonial ideology. And what do you negotiate with white supremacist settler colonial ideologues? Because what makes them ideologues is that their belief runs to the very core of who they are and why they exist. And so you can't negotiate that away. So your point, the second round of this negotiation is going to be problematic because, to me, the whole negotiation idea is antithetical to the reality of you're asking them to negotiate their very premise of existence away.
Exactly.
Jim Kavanagh.
Yeah, this is the problem. The fundamental premises are there. The fundamental project is there. And it's non-negotiable. This is for the Zionist movement and for the United States of America, which has, adopted Zionism entirely and thoroughly and clings to its bosom. The Palestinian people have no purpose in the world except to get out of the way of Jewish settlers in the Jewish state, whatever that may be, however large that may want to make itself, in fact. And that's the only concern that Zionists have about Palestinians. Otherwise, they're and insofar as they are, as human beings, are not happy about that, I'm going to resist that, then they're vermin that need to be exterminated and eradicated. And that's the way Zionism, and that's the way every Zionist, whether they say they're explicitly Zionist or whether they've just kind of absorbed it through the culture and through American culture. And oh yeah, Israel's a good thing. It's great that there's a Jewish state in Levant. Why is it great? I mean, even if the Palestinians all have to go away or have to be, they just don't exist as that's. And that's the premise of Trump's thing. Palestinians are just people we can move around. They're non-existent people. It's fundamentally a ethno-supremacist ideology of the worst kind. It's like the white settlers and the Native Americans. They're people to get rid of. They're vermin. And this is the negotiation, the process of the specific thing about the Gaza ceasefire. The next step is going to involve Israel moving its troops out of Gaza. They're moving their troops into the West Bank. They've taken over southern Syria now and Lebanon. Okay, Israel has to be defeated. I don't see that there's a way around this until the supremacists, South Africans, the Rhodesians, they had to be defeated. They had to be faced with the fact that they cannot impose. They don't have the military power. But unfortunately, Israel is confident that it has nuclear weapons of its own and it has the United States standing behind it. Israel believes, and I don't think I can challenge that belief, that it can impose with force its will upon the Palestinian people. United States backs them on that. The United States, they don't like to talk about we're doing it with force, but they're backing anything Israel will do. And I just don't. Who is going to control Gaza? Israel will never give up control of Gaza. They'll never do unless they're defeated militarily. And the world and the Western world and the Arab states are sitting back saying, oh, we'll figure out some way that we can put someone in control of Gaza that it will be okay with Israel. Well, forget it. Then Israel's going to say, yeah, but so our puppets can be in control of Gaza, but we don't even want that anymore. We want to be in control of Gaza on the ground. And I don't think they're going to give up on that until they're forced to. So I'm very pessimistic about this. And the Palestinian people and the people of Gaza are the bravest people. Hamas has fought like hell, but Israel doesn't have to defeat Hamas if they can get rid of the Palestinian people. And I don't know that they can't. Somebody tell me who's going to stop it. Who? The Arab states and Turkey could if they wanted to, but they'd have to go in militarily. They'd have to put tanks in there. They'd have to come in with ships and armed forces with reconstruction aid and saying, we're going to reconstruct this place and the Palestinians are going to choose who runs it. And we'll make sure they don't attack you if you want. We'll make a deal about that. But you can't have control of this. You can't say who runs it. You can't come back in here in a year or 2 years and bomb it all over again. Oh, we're going to bomb you. And unless someone does that, I don't know. I don't foresee a good end to this.
Again, I don't either, because I understand a little something about ideologies and white supremacy and settler colonialism, and you can't negotiate this again because you're getting to the core of who they are, and they're not. You're not going to convert them unless there's divine intervention, unless Benjamin Netanyahu gets struck by lightning and wakes up and says, oh, wait a minute, I am a racist. Oh, wait a minute, I'm wrong.
Yeah, he doesn't care about that.
Not gonna happen. Yeah. So how do you, basically you're asking them to negotiate themselves out of existence. And I don't know how you get there from here. And I'm not saying it can't be done. I'm saying I don't know how you get there from here. Very well said.
Yeah, what can I say? I agree, and I'm very pessimistic about it. I have been from the beginning. It is, as you say, they're negotiating themselves. One or the other party is negotiating itself out of existence.
Right, and because the Palestinian on the other side of the coin, the Palestinians are doing the same thing, but they're right. They're demanding humanity. they're demanding freedom. And they're not demanding freedom to eliminate anybody. They're demanding freedom to just exist and to thrive and to prosper. The Zionists are demanding the freedom to exterminate an entire group of people. And how do you...
To expel or exterminate them. And they've done it. Why should they not be confident? They did it in 1948. They expelled or exterminated viciously. Watchtime Torah. They put babies in ovens. They went around. They said the Israeli militia, the Zionist militia, they burned people alive with flamethrowers. That's how they got the state of Israel in 1946 to 48. They exterminated or expelled 750,000 Palestinians because they were vermin who were in their way, and they weren't going to accept being pushed out of the way except by force. So they did it by force, and they're saying it now. They're saying these Palestinians, these people in Gaza, every one of them we have to kill or exterminate. Don't care whether they're babies or children or women. One guy yesterday, Israeli politician in the Knesset, said we should gather up all the women and children and kill all the men. And, this is the kind of thing they talk about, because in their notion, in their head, that's reasonable, because they understand the basis of what they're doing is supremacism, and is the fact that those people are just not as worthy of consideration of being the kinds of human beings with rights and privileges that we are. They're vermin relative to us. Okay. And the fact is that most politicians and cultural and political ideology in the West has implicitly accepted that premise that relative to Jewish settlers, the Palestinians are vermin. And they didn't want to talk about it that way. They talk about it another way. They can't anymore. They've seen how the Jewish Zionists treat Palestinian people over a year and a half. They treated them like vermin, to be expelled, or to be killed or exterminated or expelled. And that's what they're doing. And you're helping them do it. And you can't sit back anymore and say, oh, I really don't think the Palestinians are vermin. I think they're just like, they're really equal to the Jewish settlers. No, you don't. You're giving the Jewish settlers bunker bombers to kill them. If you watch the Jewish Zionist soldiers deliberately sniping and killing kids, sniping and killing doctors, waiting for them to get home with their families and blowing up the whole family, you don't believe the Palestinians are equal human beings. You believe that those Jewish settlers are something else, or they have a greater right to humanity. And the Palestinians, really, what they really have to do, you have to be nicely persuade them to get out of the way because you're just vermin. And that doesn't happen. Then they blow up. The Palestinians rightfully and legally resist with armed force, which is their right, 100%. And you say, oh my God, you're not supposed to do that. Just like the white settlers in the United States of America. These Indians, they fight dirty. we come with guns and cannons, and they sneak behind the trees and come up behind us. I mean, this is, they're savages. So this is what it is. It's classic colonialism. It's the civilized colonizer versus the savage. And it's nonsense. It's nonsense. And it's to be rejected 1,000%. And it's a shame on the world that this is happening, and that the entire European continent, all the governments of the United States and Europe are supporting this.
So to that point, what is it and this will be the last question for you today. And thank you for joining me as always. When we look at the political dynamic here in the United States, and you listen to the Democratic Party, and they're down with Zionism.
100%.
Kamala Harris tried to sell us genocide. And whether it's Gaza, whether it's Haiti, pick a place. Gaza is not the only space. Hakeem Jeffries tried to convince CARICOM to be the Black Caribbean face on American genocide in Haiti. What does that say to you about the American political dynamic and how we, as the left, and you can define that as you want to, as progressives, as the left, whatever label you want to put, as sensible human beings, let's say that, resist this? Because again, when I listen to what the Democrats are saying right now in opposition to Donald Trump, they're not saying anything. They're not offering any. Yesterday, what Hakeem Jeffries, this is an all hands on deck. This is all hands on deck. Well, what the hell does that mean, Hakeem? What are you proposing? What's the counter narrative? What are you offering that's going to make my life better? I'm not hearing a damn thing. Jim Kavanagh.
Exactly. Where's the Medicare for all? Universal health care? Where's a job guarantee? Trump is saying he's going to cap interest rates at 10% for temporarily. You cap interest rates at 10%, you'll do more for working class people in this country immediately than raising taxes on the rich.
Especially when their credit cards are at 24, 25,
exactly. That's killing people. That's the private debt that you want to. And why don't the Democrats say, yeah, that's a good idea. Let's do it permanently. Let's have a permanent legal limit on credit. This is usury. This is crazy. There's 100 things they could have done. They could do. But the fact is, the problem is they could have done it. Barack Obama came into office with a bigger mandate than Trump has. He had all the houses of Congress, a veto-proof majority, a filibuster-proof majority in the Senate. They were all, I remember reading how are the Republicans ever going to come back from this? They've been wiped out, just like you're reading now about the Democrats. And we could have. The Republicans did not stop him. It was he who didn't want it. We don't have universal coverage, single payer health insurance, because Obama didn't want it. Nobody could have stopped him if he had pushed for it. If he and his media allies, he didn't want it. And he said, and the Democratic Party since then, since 2000, the primary task of the Democratic Party in the elections of 2016 and 2020 was to tell you can't have Medicare for all. The primary task was not to defeat Donald Trump. It was to defeat what Bernie Sanders represented, a left economic populism. Clearly, and 100%, it's indisputable. They didn't care as much about whether Donald Trump won as whether Bernie Sanders won. Okay, so this is the problem. The Democrats have disgraced themselves, and they lied about everything for the past 4 years. They put someone in who knows when around the country. They censored everybody. They put you into this, and Obama could have stopped the wars. Instead, he had 7 more wars. What people wanted was social services, social programs, and stop the wars. Obama did exactly the opposite. And the Democrats have been telling you since then, oh, no, we can't do it. So what are they going to say now? Who's going to believe them? This is the problem. There's no hope from these parties. And people believe. Unfortunately, they believe because Donald Trump was set up. I said it 1,000 times with you on the radio. Why are the Democrats helping Trump so much? They're setting him up as the anti-establishment guy. Everybody hates the establishment for good reasons. And they kept telling you Donald Trump is the enemy of the establishment. So a lot of people voted for him thinking he's going to change everything. And he'll change some things, but they're not going to be very nice. No, some of them will be good. Some of them won't. But the fundamental, this Doge thing, this is all going to be, it's going to be the final, coming to term of all this debt stuff, all this austerity stuff, and blah 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 blah. I don't know what he's going to do with foreign policy. It's all over the place. But the point is, it's not really a left program at all, and it's nuts, and it's a loose cannon, and blah blah blah. But the Democrats, the reason we have Donald Trump is because of the failure of the Democrats to build a movement that they could have if they wanted to. The Republicans didn't prevent the Democrats from building an economic populist movement, from building social programs, from stopping regime change wars. They didn't prevent that. It wasn't prevented by the Republicans. It was pushed full steam ahead by the Democrats. And that's what they've been destroyed by.
Flat Earth says DNC was infiltrated by the GOP. No, No. The DNC was infiltrated by AIPAC. AIPAC told, and folks, this is not some anti-Semitic analysis. AIPAC told you in the New York Times in April of 2024, we are investing $100 million into the Democratic primary to unseat Democrats we don't like. Quote, end quote, pull it up, read it. The DNC was not infiltrated by the Republicans. They were infiltrated by Lockheed Martin. They were infiltrated by Raytheon, McDonnell Douglas, Boeing, General Electric. They asked Jim Calhoun, I think it's Jim Calhoun, the former CEO of Boeing. They asked him in 2020, in July, who would you prefer? Donald Trump or Joe Biden? His answer, it doesn't matter.
The difference.
Because we're going to get paid anyway. So flat Earth, no.
They were infiltrated by the good billionaires, by the billionaires. Elon Musk was a Democrat 3 years ago. He was the hero of the Democrats. Everybody
was a Democrat
because he's such a genius and he's so smart. And this is the love affair with these billionaires they think are so smart and so wonderful, going to help us change everything. And
Donald Trump was a Democrat in the 80s.
Yeah. Oh yeah. He contributed to Hillary Clinton's senatorial campaign, and that's what he did. That was his great horrible thing he said in the 2016 primary. I know all these people. Look, I contributed to all of them.
J.D. Vance was a Democrat.
Who's that?
J.D. Vance.
Yeah.
J.D. Vance was a Democrat before the Haitians came to Springfield and ate up his patch.
Ate all the damn cats.
Dr. Jim Kavanagh, as always, man.
All right, I got a new word from you today, Wilma, that I'm going to cherish. Pissativity.
Pistivity. Pissed off to the highest of pistivity. Actually, that's not me. That's the comedian, the late comedian.
George Carlin?
No. That did Bebe's Kiss from Chicago. Oh shoot, he did. Golly, what is his name? Give me 1 second here. I can't steal it.
Not Richard Pryor.
No. He's dead. He died of kidney failure, I believe. Oh shoot, what is his? Somebody help me out here. I'll send it to you. Anyway, it wasn't me.
That's a great word.
I'm just drawing a blank on his name. Robin Harris. There we go.
Okay.
The comedian Robin Harris is the one that came up with I'm pissed off to the highest of pistivity.
That's a good one.
God bless Robin Harris.
Okay.
Dr. Jim Kavanagh,
thank you very much for having me, Wilmer.
Hey, man, as always, really appreciate it. And folks, thank you all for listening to the Connecting the Dots podcast with me, Dr. Wilmer Leon. Stay tuned for new episodes every week. Tomorrow, we're going to be talking about the Leonard Peltier with his legal, not him. We'll be talking about him with his legal team. Please follow and subscribe, leave a review, share the show. You can follow us on social media. You'll find all the links below in the show description. And remember that this is where the analysis of politics, culture, and history converge, because talk without analysis is just chatter. And we don't chatter here on Connecting the Dots. See y'all tomorrow. Until then, I am Dr. Wilmer Leon. Have a blessed remainder of your day. Peace. I'm out.
Connecting the Dots with Dr. Wilmer Leon, where the analysis of politics, culture, and history converge.